Morning, Margaret. It's a lovely park scene behind you, sitting outside.
I think it's a Hamilton scene.
It looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's down by the river at the gardens, I think.
Ah.
I can remember correctly.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that was a marathon yesterday.
It looked like it.
Yeah, but
it didn't look like there was too many agreements made either. Not that we should be making agreements in informal briefings, right? It
no, and it
felt
was
a bit like that.
I mean, when we're voting, and that's what I said at the start. So what's the point of this? What are we doing?
Shouldn't be voting in an informal briefing.
Yeah.
Oh. No.
And I suggested right at the start, look, because we were just going through it sort of line by line and getting another rundown on what we'd already been run down with.
Yeah.
I said, well, look, why don't we just go to the end? Why don't we sort of see who wants the 3.8 and who wants a reduction and who wants a freeze or who wants more?
Thanks,
and then
Ian.
just work backwards from there.
Yeah. Remember, he's saying, remember, we're on YouTube already.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I was just going to ask about the agenda for tomorrow, actually.
Tomorrow?
Oh, sorry, for agenda for, we should have had the agenda for council yesterday.
Oh, okay.
4 working days, but because the briefing was yesterday too, I guess it's cutting it a bit fine.
We're hoping to receive the report today and have it out to you today.
That was terrible timing of the staff, not you guys, but of them that did that.
Yeah, it makes it nice and tight.
Yeah.
It won't be too strenuous for everybody.
Yeah, well, yeah. I want some time with that one because it's only one meeting and then we go up for consultation. Which again, I've sat around this table for a decade complaining about that stuff, but I had my opportunity to complain earlier, but I think the timetables just got squished with COVID and the zombie apocalypse and Donald Trump, and I'm sure he can affect our agenda.
I haven't seen the news this morning, but
no, me neither.
I imagine that demonstrating and peaceful and non-peaceful is still happening in the States.
Yeah, I guess so. It's not going to get better anytime soon, not with him in charge.
No, it's such a shame.
Oh. I suppose we'll all be heading to the chamber again soon, won't we?
I
don't want to.
That'll be strange.
It will be strange.
Morning, Jeff.
Hi, Margaret. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining this morning.
Yeah. Good to be here.
Good. The second one on, Ange is there, but
Oh, okay.
only seeing you at the moment.
What's that lovely scene you've got behind you, Margaret?
I think, if I remember correctly, I chose a couple of photos, but I think it's down by the river in the Hamilton Gardens, I think.
Ah, right.
Or maybe it's on the, down by the ferry bank or somewhere around there, but I tried to get a Hamilton scene.
Yeah. Oh, it's lovely autumnal look.
Yeah, it's my favourite time of year.
Is it?
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Mm. So what's that behind you? Where's that?
That is Bryan Square, the architect's version of what a pedestrian cycle bridge could look like.
Ah,
Very,
okay.
very ambitious.
Very expensive. Fabulous.
I reckon it would be about 50 million as one, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to do it well, make it iconic.
It is beautiful.
It is awesome.
It is beautiful. It's because as you say, you want it to be special, don't you?
Mm. Mind you, we had that conversation with the Peacock Bridge as well, and
Yeah.
we succumbed after seeing the big figures. It was special underneath, but
Yeah.
or could be special underneath.
Yeah, true. We're live now too, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Where's Charlie today, Jeff?
He's gone to doggy daycare.
Oh, has he? Oh.
Yeah.
Are you leaving the house today?
I will be this afternoon when I go pick him up. Yeah. He's got quite bad arthritis in his hips, just like me.
Oh.
Yeah. So he's just going once a week at the moment.
You would have made my day if you'd lifted up his little paw in the screen.
Hey, there's still time. One day. They do a lot of sleeping, don't they?
They're very good at it. They don't seem to complain about,
No, they don't complain.
No.
Stop,
Yeah.
do they? Not
Margaret,
that
is your dog better, Margaret? Because was making those terrible noises one time.
He is better. He's definitely slowing down. He's coming up 12.
Yeah.
And when I'm going to take him for a walk, he starts out with a hiss and a roar, but it doesn't take very long before he's dragging the chain, and I have to tempt him with treats. Come on, Rusty, you can do it.
Yeah.
Dangle a bit of food in front of him, and he trots a little bit.
Did you give him ice cream the other day on your way home?
No, I don't think so. I used to sort of allow him to have a few extra treats, and but every now and then it upsets his tummy, and I open up the garage in the morning and it's like, ooh, code everything. So I'm cut the treats now, so I know exactly what he's been eating.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it is 3 minutes past 10. Are you there, Amy? Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning. Good morning. Do we have a quorum?
Why not?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We do.
Madam Chair, just when you get to apologies, please include mine for early departure because of the Waikato plan.
Yes, very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Look, we do we
and
do
Margaret,
have a quorum.
Maxine said she's joining as an outside committee member, but is just running a little late.
A little bit late. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Sarah. So we'll officially start. thank you. Welcome to our second Environment Committee meeting for the triennium, and also actually for me, the first one chairing on Zoom. So I am letting you know that in advance, so that requesting a little bit of patience if it's needed from time to time. Thank you. Apologies received this morning. Thank you, Mayor Paula, for potential early departure, but I've also received apologies from Māngai Norm for lateness, and from Councillor Bunting for lateness as well, and Councillor Maxine, who should be joining us shortly as well. So I'll move those apologies. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Sarah. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those, raise your hand. It's probably easier. Those against? That's carried. Confirmation of the agenda. I'll move that the agenda's accepted. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Sarah. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? There being none. Public forum. Now, we did receive an email from Hannah Huggan this morning. Has everybody had an opportunity to read that, please?
Yep.
Okay. So that being the case,
Sorry, Margaret, I haven't seen the email. I've been on played out on minutes. Who was that from?
Hannah Huggan from.
The email
sorry.
came from me, sorry, and it was uploaded to Diligent as well.
Yeah. What?
Just after 9, if you're looking in your emails at the moment.
Look, I'm very happy.
Oh, I can see it now. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Well into meetings by then. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Look, we can take from student environment leaders. We can take as long as you need to read that now, Dave.
But does it affect what we're going on with? I mean, I can read it during the meeting. I've got it up now, but you keep going, Margaret. Don't hold.
Okay, it talks largely to the point about the climate action plan, to points in the general manager's report. So yeah, should be time for you if you're
Right. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay,
Margaret, you keep going, and I'll read it while we're talking.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So I'll move that the report from Hannah Huggan is received, and it's seconded by Sarah. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? No. Morning, Maxine. That's carried.
Morena, apologies for
Morning,
lateness.
thanks for joining us. No worries. Okay, we'll move to item 5, being confirmation of the previous minutes on March the 3rd. Do you all have? So I'm flicking between screens, so forgive me if there's a bit of a delay. So I'll happy to move that report.
Margaret, could I just speak to it just very quickly, just raise something?
Sure, certainly. Go ahead.
I think I put in an apology for that as a non-member of the committee. I don't see one recorded.
Okay. I think you did actually. I think you messaged me. Yes. Yeah.
No big deal. Just
no, that's worth definitely worth noting. Thank you. So Amy, how do we do that?
Oh, sorry.
What we've done with those ones is for the non-members, they haven't been formally included within the apologies because the attendance didn't count towards quorum, so that's why you weren't
okay.
showing there. But we have recorded in anybody that was in attendance as well, but a non-member above in the attendance section.
Okay, that's right.
Okie dokie. So is Councillor Jeff's name there then in attendance? Is that what you're saying? Oh,
Because
no,
there
that
was an apology
Yes,
for that.
apology. Yep. Okay, thank you. Dave?
Thanks, Margaret. Look, just a question following from Jeff's really. I had another councillor who's not a listed member of this committee ring me today and say, we've got a day off, have I got something wrong in my diary? And I told him about this meeting and he said, oh, I'm not on it, but I would have liked to have known. So I think we were told, and all of that, certainly got notices saying it had been uploaded to the Diligent, but I'm wondering whether we sort of put it in everyone's diary anyway. How does that work, Amy? Maybe if I could ask.
We have sent them to all committee members and all councillors and Mangai as well, that even those that aren't members officially on it.
As an invite, as an Outlook invite?
Yeah.
Sweet, okay.
So I can look into what happened there to find out why you can't see it, but it was sent to all, just to cover our bases.
Sweet, thanks. That's what I want to check, Margaret. I'll follow up with you later, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Good question. Any other questions or comments around the report, the minutes? Okay, I've moved. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Kirsch. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Very good. Thank you very much. That's carried. Let's go to the next item. Will be my chair's report. So I'll take it as read. Any questions or comments? Any discussion?
Yes, questions. If may I go ahead with it?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just interested in terms of the resolution. I'd like to get some feedback from staff in regards to that resolution and whether, if we're wanting to be looking at the sustainability of, say, our council buildings, whether this covers that sufficiently, given that it only refers to energy efficiency, and whether it would be, I guess, more efficient on our side of things to be looking at, the full sustainability impact of, say, new builds and existing buildings in one go, rather than just looking at energy efficiency.
If I may, Chair Margaret.
Yes.
I think the intent of the recommendation is around the energy efficiency specifically. I would just, excuse me, I just note that Corey Lang is on the call. I asked Corey if he could join just from a building regulation point of view, if there were questions around what we currently have from a sort of district plan policy point of view in terms of energy efficiency. So I just wanted to let you know that Corey is there and can answer some of those questions. But yeah, in terms of your original question, Councillor Sarah, that's I'm interpreting that recommendation in the chair's report as energy efficiency specifically. I think that was the intent from Councillor Margaret.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but obviously it's a Margaret to confirm.
Yeah. Yes. I guess my question is, if we're already going to then say we look at our current policies around council buildings when we're building new ones or looking at retrofitting them, wouldn't we be kind of looking at the whole sustainability picture? And so if we are looking at, say, putting forward a policy to improve the sustainability of our buildings, we'd want to kind of do it all in one go in terms of looking at water efficiency, the materials we use to build and that kind of thing.
I've referenced some of that in the general manager's report in terms of I think the conversation came up at a council meeting previously around green buildings and Green Star rating, and I think that's probably more the territory that that you're talking about. I guess it's really up to the committee to determine what they want the focus of that report back to be. Is it just around energy efficiency, or do you want to have a wider scope? So I think that's probably a committee or a governance decision on how wide you want that scope to be.
Yeah. And in terms of, say, looking at residential homes and commercial buildings, have we had any feedback from, say, the growth team or the staff working on our housing strategy in terms of how that might fit in?
Corey, is that something that you might be able to, or Amy even can help?
Hi there. Happy for me to speak. Yeah. Hi, Sarah. Yes, so we're still definitely looking to include green buildings in the housing strategy. That is something the discussions are kind of ongoing about how that looks. We're still scoping out exactly what the report is going to entail, but we see green buildings as a key pillar for that. So there's potential that, and this would have to be further discussed around if we're looking at council energy efficiency versus how council's policies for construction of residential and commercial buildings in the plan, those are kind of two different work streams I see. So yeah, the discussion of Homestar and Green Star and how the plan or other incentives that council can do to bring that is definitely happening.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering then is what committee is that kind of best to come back to? Are we best to, in terms of residential and commercial buildings that are private? Because I agree it's two different conversations. Council kind of controlled buildings and then ones which are in the private sector. With the private buildings, yeah, I'm wondering, is it better that we wait for this housing strategy report to come back and that comes back with recommendations, or is it useful that, as the Environment Committee, we do a piece of work which feeds into that and allows, yeah, I guess for it to then be included in that piece of work, but it is maybe more focused.
What's the timeline on the housing strategy, Amy?
So we have a date for the report on the housing strategy, not the actual strategy itself, to be received for the Strategic Growth Committee on 20th of August. So that will be going up then. So that's more of a scoping report and will be a decision to whether or not we progress or what the options are to progress with the housing strategy.
Okay, thank you. One final question just to Sean was in regard to what we'd actually expect with this report coming back. Is it, it kind of sounds like it's just a scoping report in itself, then saying this is what we would need to then do any further policy work around, say, green buildings. Can you just clarify what we would expect back in this report?
Yeah.
And what staff resources that we would, have to put towards it?
So yes, it is as you say. So the report back would be around what currently is in the district plan, what current policies apply, all of those kinds of things, what the current practices are, and how we ensure or how we promote or incentivize energy efficient buildings now, and would also identify what work would need to be done or what more would need to be done in order to take that further.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to, I guess, signal a possible amendment, but I just want to wait and see where others are at on this as well. Cheers, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. Sorry, we got that. You can't see the blue hands.
Oh no, sorry.
So Amy, you need to make Margaret co-host, because then she can see the hands up.
Sorry, she is already co-host.
I've got the screen up. I've got the little sidebar up now. Yes, sorry, Dave. I've got Dave then. Then Paula?
Yep. Okay. Look, I think I agree with the point or where Sarah was coming from, but I mean, I agree with what you put in there in your report, Margaret, but I'm wondering whether it goes far enough, and it's also sort of addressed in the General Manager's report. I would see for council-owned buildings, places where we have staff, we look at the energy efficiency, but we also look at things like the transport plan for the people working there. If we're talking about overall council energy efficiency, as far as the district plan goes, Amy has mentioned that there's a report coming to my committee on the 20th of August. Thanks, Amy, because you're the first person that's told me that exactly like that. But I would be looking for more than just a scoping report there. I'd be looking at to identify the areas that we might want to take action in, because it's not like they haven't been spoken about before, because the whole area of sustainable buildings, built areas, you know, there's things like policies we could be doing quite quickly, which then lead to further work on the district plan. There are transport plans, there's your housing strategy, there's whether we have our own incentive programs for insulation and water reuse, and there's any number of things like that that have been raised at this council and previous councils. They need to be collected together, and I guess I'm frustrated because it's all moving at a glacial pace, and I would like us to see, at the very least, agree on the actions that need to be taken and what our policies are going to be quite quickly. So I'd sort of go further than what you have in your report, Margaret, to look both at some wider sustainability issues in as far as HCC properties go, and also the wider community sort of issues that were touched on by Sarah and Sean before. I think we have to provide a lead in that area. It's not, we don't get all the work done at once, and I don't think, I realise we're short on staff, but I mean, there are staff in Jen's group, the planning area, for instance, that are across this idea. Corey's obviously got information on that, but to be honest,
Sorry, Dave, can I just interrupt for a minute? You got a question coming out of this?
Yeah, I mean, all right. We used to have a staff member that concentrated on our energy efficiency within our buildings. Yeah. What's been done to propose that to come back again? We used to get regular reports in this area 15 years ago.
Who can answer that? Who's that posed to?
It's a position that was in Jen's area. Corey might be able to answer it, but I understand that used to be a position which then it's not a position that exists now. Corey, are you able to shed any sort of further light on that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Councillor Dave. Yes, we did have an eco-design advisor that was based out of the building unit a couple of years back. That position was created in a collaboration with central government, who funded it, and the intent in that role was to get wider awareness, if you like, across the community around what could be done around healthy homes effectively. So that includes energy efficiency and sustainability. So that position was within our unit and did go out and do consultations. We found that over time that those consultations turned more into training exercises for corporate clients, because energy efficiency and sustainability is now more widely understood and accepted through architectural companies and institutes, I guess, that have been set up specifically focused in that area. So in answer to your question, yes, we did have somebody, and that position no longer exists within the building unit.
I'm actually going back further than that, Madam Chair. Before we had that, which is good, that thanks for that, Corey, but before that we had a council staff member who was the energy efficiency advisor. who reported on our council properties. And I mean, for instance, one of the things that came out of it was putting electricity generators linked in with the gas emissions at our River Road, Horatu old dump site. Was one of the, so we had business cases put to us regularly about how we could improve our energy efficiency within council. So that was sort of before your time, I guess, Corey.
So are you aware of that that role, Corey?
No, sorry, I'm not. But that may be a role that was sitting within our facilities department, so sitting currently within our corporate group. So, Sean, I'm not sure if you have any awareness as to whether that's something that currently sits in Emily's.
No one providing those sorts of reports and information to us nowadays.
The Martin provides information on our own emissions and council kind of emissions, but that's something slightly different, I think. That's the role that sits in the facilities team and Emily's team.
Okay, I know he's been helping with vehicle efficiency sort of issues. So, and he's a contractor, I believe, but maybe we could, can we include at least some information on the staffing resource that might be needed to do some of this stuff, Madam Chair?
Yes, and you're thinking of an amendment then?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what Sarah had in mind, but I did think we could go a little bit broader.
Broad, okay. Yes. Staffing. Sorry, what were your words again? Staffing, resourcing around
the wider sustainability issues, but that might be what Sarah was talking about. I'm not sure.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
No, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Paula.
Thank you, Chair Forsyth. Just a good report. I'm just interested in whether you would widen out your recommendation to include a look at the sustainability strategy. I know originally it came under the community committee when I was the chair. I do remember, I can't remember the staff's name, Sean, but I remember going into his office and he had a whole complete wall, a most amazing diagram generated to look at the sustainability of the organisation across the all areas, and it did have some energy, had procurement, had all kinds of strands that were in there, green procurement. Haven't seen it in a while, I have to say. It was pretty impressively formed piece of work, so I think potentially, Chair Margaret, that could add to this debate, which I support. And the other part I wonder about is in talking about, as you've alluded to in your report, the fact that COVID has given us the opportunity to rethink our own building, whether you are going to put ask for a timeline or a report to be generated around that. It can't be immediately, of course, because Paul Richard probably couldn't pull that together with the annual plan on his heels, but I'd like to think that we, by the time we go into the long-term plan, we could potentially have seen what that looks like with a blend of working from home. So would you include those two things perhaps?
Yeah, look, we haven't got a motion on the floor yet. I'm certainly open to amending mine. Given the feedback this morning, but yes, Paula, your question was around where
just, you've put, I'd like to recommend that committee request staff to report on current practices, and I'd say and updates those on the sustainability strategy, and then potentially a possible one that I don't know what the appropriate timeline would look like, Sean, but to get some feedback from staff about the potential redesign, reuse of our corporate buildings post-COVID, which the purpose of which is driving efficiency, cost efficiency, but also environmental efficiency as we travel less, etc., and all of those other things. We travel, yes, we're more online and many other things. I mean, that's got to translate to less energy in the building, less it's going to make my power bill go up, but it's going to make no. But you know, there's going to be some consequences of that. When are we going to look at that? And Sean, you might have an idea.
Yeah, so you're raising a lot of really good points. What I would say is that a lot of those things, those broader issues, are covered in the Climate Action Plan. So you might remember from last time that the Climate Action Plan has a section on the city and reducing carbon emissions across the city. And there's also a section on the council. So what can the council do to reduce its own emissions? So I think a lot of that, some of that broader, those broader things that you're raising there, Paula, will be covered in that Climate Action Plan, which is due to come back to this committee in September anyway.
So will that include the rework of the tower block and how that might work, or no? Does it not go that far, does it?
Not at this stage.
Well, that's, I think, what I'm getting to is when, I know it won't be done immediately, but when can we get to that stage where we review the use of the tower block, etc.?
Yeah, I'm just not sure that would be something which would come through the Environment Committee, because it's sort of a much broader issue.
Okay, maybe it could just be noted in the minutes that they'll have an impact.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great, thanks. Well, look, I'll
Margaret, just noting I've sent through some wording on the chat and also to sent it through to Amy for
yes,
a motion.
I'd still like to put my motion forward with some possible changes. Well, with some changes, but so I'd like to move that motion with the to receive the report, but also to, sorry, let me just switch screens again to add in, oops, to add in a clause about sustainability practices as the sustainability strategy as well. So it would read something like request staff to report to the next Environment Committee on Council's, actually very similar to what you've got here sent through.
Margaret, if I may, there isn't a sustainability strategy as such.
Yes, okay, current practices and policies relating to energy efficiency buildings and an update on the sustainability strategy or something similar. Happy to receive some input from you, Sean.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's no actual official there's no official sustainability strategy. I'm not quite sure what you're asking for an update on.
Isn't it the sustainable?
And one at a time, please. Sean, have you finished?
Yep, sure.
Okay, what I'm trying to do is just include some input from the Mayor, from Dave as well. You were talking about transport efficiency as well. But actually, the reason that I wanted to start with something simple was because it was, I'm not really getting into debate just yet, but just to pick something, thank you, thanks Ian, to pick something that was straightforward, a simple starting point that's definitely relevant to the Environment Committee, relevant to the Environment Action Plan, to the Climate Action Plan. And given where we are on our timeline with what we're actually producing, I thought something, a tighter focus would be an easier way for us to start. So start small and grow bigger. Given that we've got plans and policies across other committees as well, and we've already got strategic growth and the housing plan and housing strategy coming up. So it was my intent really around this, this focused and simple resolution, but I do take feedback from the committee saying that you want to stretch it wider. We have an amendment put forward by Councillor Thompson, and if I have a if I have a seconder, we can potentially start debate if we have got the two on the table.
Just, yeah, Margaret, if I may, I just want to check with Ian or Amy in terms of that amendment. I don't know this so the amendment is that the staff report to the Strategic Growth Committee. I just want to check with governance whether this committee has the authority to request a report to the Strategic Growth Committee.
Well, apparently one's coming there anyway.
Yeah.
According to Amy. So
what I'd be suggesting is something more along the lines of notes that there is a report to the August 2020 Strategic Growth Committee, since it has already been confirmed, rather than requesting it because it is already underway.
And Chair Margaret, if I may also suggest in terms of the motion, so the request staff to report to the next Environment Committee on Council's current practices and policies relating to energy efficient buildings and an update on sustainability practices, something like that. I'll just because there isn't a sustainability strategy as such, so maybe something just a little bit more generic that might help.
Okay, and that would encapsulate the feedback from this morning.
Yep.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to second that for you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Leary. Right. So we have a...
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt, it just seems that the two reports are, the two motion amendment are almost the same, apart from just noting the bit to the Strategic Growth Committee, which all it does is that adds a bit of context, but isn't the rest of it the same?
Look, it appears that way to me, and noting the report's going to another committee, I mean, we know that's happening anyway. I think that could just be, already be noted in the minutes, rather than as a resolution. I mean, it's a matter of course. It does seem a bit redundant, but I mean, I might, Councillor Thompson, I'll refer to you. Is there a reason you wanted that part there?
Well, I just wanted some clarification in regards to, for example, if we're going to be getting a report back on council buildings and what we're doing in regards to new builds and existing builds, I wanted to make sure that it was going to be beyond just energy efficiency. For example, you know, we're looking at building the Rototuna hub, and I'd like to understand our policy around how, you know, around sustainability in terms of that build beyond just energy efficiency. So if we're able to have the motion clarify that it is a wider scope, then I'm happy with that. Otherwise, the main difference there is really that my one there says relating to environmental sustainability of council of buildings rather than energy efficiency, and also clarifies that in this case, because there's already a report going to the Growth Committee on housing and the housing strategy, which could include policy actions around private dwellings and commercial buildings. Therefore, it would just be for the Environment Committee to receive a report on council buildings specifically.
Okay, well, I'm going to put a question. Sarah, can you and I work together on this and come up with one resolution? I think they're very similar, and let's move on. So how happy or unhappy are you about the motion? What would you like to see added?
I think that I would like energy efficiency swapped out with environmental sustainability, and that would be a start. I can't see it now. If we're able to share the screen again, that would be helpful.
Well, I'd like to keep energy efficiency in. If we could add, what were your words?
Practices relating to, well, I guess you could say, was it relating to sustainability and the sustainability and energy efficiency of buildings?
Madam Chair, can I just ask a point of order, please, if I may?
Mhm.
Is it, it's, we're getting into quite a lot of finesse over what is actually your report. I think it's
Yes.
usual to get feedback to your report and maybe shape it somewhat. An amendment of this nature, I would have thought went through your agenda setting meeting and discussions with staff.
It did.
I propose the intent. It just seems that it's not usual to go into this level of detail on the amendments in the chair's report, but that's entirely up to you if you're comfortable, Margaret.
Yes, look, I totally agree. But what I'm trying to do is include feedback and input from all members of the committee, particularly the deputy chair. But yes, you're right. We did go through an agenda setting process, and I thought we were all clear with that. So, yeah. But that's not to be. But I'm wanting to be cooperative about this. So I request patience from everybody, and as soon as we get this over the line, I'm sure we'll be able to move along a bit more quickly.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Paula.
Madam Chair, just another thing to help, as far as the amendments part B, I can take that up anyway with Jen Baird
Yeah.
and make sure, I mean, I think you're right, if it's noted in the minutes, then we can handle it from there,
Absolutely.
and that will, it won't get lost.
Yep, thank you. Right, Councillor Thompson, are you?
Yep,
Is the motion now
accept,
acceptable?
yes, no, I can accept that.
Great, thank you very much. Well, thank you everyone for your patience, and thank you for your input as well. I think it's important to take that time to come up with something that we're all in agreement with. Are there any, well, we're sort of morphed into debate, but now that we have a motion and it's been seconded, are you happy with that, with the changes to the motion, Councillor Ange? Councillor O'Leary?
I nodded and did my thumbs up.
Oh, sorry, I can't see you.
Oh, that's right, you can't. Yeah.
I can just see the motion at the moment. Okay, very good, thank you. Well, let's open for debate. It sounds, I think we've already had some already, but we'll go a little bit further if we need. I'll look for the hands. Right, top of my list, I have Mayor Paula, thank you.
Oh, sorry, we're in debate.
Yes, we're in debate.
Just very quickly then, the only thing I thought your report was good. It highlights future direction. That's great. My only view was to broaden it to the sustainability strategy that already exists in the organisation. So therefore, I'll be going with your recommendation at this time, noting that the intent of what Sarah's trying to achieve, I'm fully behind. I'm not sure that your report in it this way is the way to drive that, but that's the only view I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Maybe the Mayor's not aware that motion, the amendment's been withdrawn. Is it not?
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, no, we withdrew it after broadening the
Perfect,
motion.
and we're all on board. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Cool, thank you. Next on my list, I'm just going what's in front of me, sorry, is Dave, Councillor Dave.
Thanks, Chair Margaret. Look, I guess I just want to reinforce something I said before, that we need to start moving a bit quicker in the policy making area for the Environment Committee and all its issues, and a lot of that spills over into other areas, including the committee I chair. But COVID-19 can't be an excuse for things being delayed too long. For a couple of months, yes, but I think the public fully expect us to have a good program of works arising out of some upgraded policies well before the end of this council term. And I'd see this committee as being a watchdog over the rest of council to see that happens. in each of the sort of specific areas. So I really think we need to get cracking. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Sarah?
Thank you, Chair Margaret. So in regard to policies around council buildings, I'd really like to see how we can be improving on our new builds. We've got the Rototuna Hub as a potential new build coming up soon, and I think that's an opportunity for us to take a lead in that area there. And also looking at our existing buildings and having a policy around how we retrofit them to ensure that they're energy efficient, water efficient, but we're also looking at the materials that we're using. So we're taking a broader view of sustainability. In regard to residential homes and commercial buildings, there's a lot of things that we could be doing to promote, say, Homestar 6 rated homes. At the moment, our housing stock is incredibly poor. And even new builds that are being built today, a lot of them are being built at a substandard level. And while we can't necessarily mandate that they're built at a higher standard because of restrictions around the building code, we can at least do a lot to promote and encourage, and also to build awareness amongst the public that they should be actually demanding that new homes are built to a better standard so that they're healthy, they're more affordable to operate, and they're better for the environment. But when we look at a lot of our existing homes, they're cold, they're damp, they're not efficient, and they're not actually healthy to live in. So I think that this is critical to the well-beings of our city, that we're acting on this, and we're doing it now. As Councillor Dave said, we really need to be moving at greater speed with this. But I do note that at the moment resourcing for this committee is incredibly tight, and that addressing that through the annual plan process will be critical. Otherwise, this will really just be a token committee, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no one else on my screen that wishes to speak. Is there anybody in case I've missed? No. Okay. Well, look, I'll just wrap up. And look, I couldn't agree more with everyone's contributions around this. As I said earlier on, I'm acutely aware of what we have currently achieved and what we still need to achieve, and the pace at which we're moving, and hence I wanted to just zero in on something small to get started, with a view to broaden our effectiveness later on. But I've been very open to take suggestions from my committee, hence the process where we, by group, managed to get another version of my motion over the line. So thank you for that input. I'm also acutely aware of resourcing in this committee, and I put it to you all that when it comes time for us as a council making the big decisions about funding and resourcing for our city, then I expect you all to be supporting those environmental items and environment committee enabling items, so that we can move forward and that we can deliver what we say we'd like to do. Well, good. Okay, well, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Amy, do you take over from here?
Yes, and any dissenting?
I've arrived too late to hear the debate, so can I just abstain from this one? Is that right?
That's never stopped you before, Bunty.
Yeah, true. Okay, I'm in.
We'll just register that you join the meeting post the vote on this matter.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor
Yeah,
Bunting.
makes sense.
Sorry, was anybody dissenting on that one? So the motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to Councillor Bunting and
Thank you.
Mangai Nor. Thank you for tuning in. I'll split screens. Right, our next item from memory is our GM's report. So over to you, Sean.
Thank you, Councillor Margaret. Yeah, so there were just three sort of update items on this. One was the nature and the city strategy, and Maria and Amanda are here to just speak to that briefly, and answer questions. The second was the climate action report, and Julie Clausen can speak to that. And I think we've sort of covered the green buildings piece as part of the previous discussion. So unless there were sort of further questions on that, I'd probably leave that one. But I thought it might be I'll sort of hand over to Maria Maria or Amanda to speak to nature in the city and kind of cover any questions there might be on that update.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Margaret and Mayor Paula and councillors. As you'll see, staff have continued work on the nature and the city strategy, albeit in a slightly different format since lockdown. And you know, the updates there, and if you have questions, Amanda Banks is on call to answer.
Sorry, I've got to check my screen. Let's go with Sarah first.
Thank you, Maria and Amanda. My question was just in relation, looking at the engagement you're doing with communities around gullies. That's fantastic. I'm just wondering if, in terms of providing some extra support to restoration and bringing communities together in the meantime, what work could we be doing taking into account current capacity?
Sorry, what work can be done?
Oh, just so probably for Maria, just in regards to right now providing support to the volunteer groups to organise, restoration sessions and to connect with communities around the gullies and that kind of thing. Do we have opportunities before the long-term plan to be doing more in that space?
Yes, as you're aware, Councillor Sarah, there is an annual plan proposal that aims to achieve the support I believe you're talking about. I know the gully groups have been talking about that, and I believe elected members have been sent a letter, and they are still very keen for that annual plan proposal to go ahead, and believe that they can achieve some really good outcomes in the weed busting and pest control space with that money, should it be approved.
Okay, and just in terms of, because I've had some feedback that we used to have, I know we have a part-time person around this, but we used to have more support in terms of coordination of volunteering efforts and things, and there could be opportunity, I guess, to lever off of that as a council and to support those communities. Is there anything more we could be doing alongside of that funding?
I believe that Ali and Amanda are now meeting with the gully groups more regularly, bi-monthly. As a result of those meetings, we have managed to get some tangible things achieved that will help them. Just more communication, understanding where they're working, what they're working on, and how we can align our operational teams. In the absence of a larger resource input, we are limited and stretched in terms of what our current funding and our resource allows us to do.
And just in addition to that, through the, if I can just add as well, through the Nature in the City engagement that we'll be doing. So we've already had 2 Zoom online meetings with the gully groups. And we sort of, some of the things that we talked about as previous budget cuts, which is, has been a real concern for those groups. And we're just in the process of planning another workshop with them, looking at how we can do face-to-face as well as in Zoom, because people have got varying levels of comfort with face-to-face contact. So in those sorts, so we'll probably have 2 or 3 workshops with the gully groups, and in those workshops we'll be looking at what do they want to see for growing more nature in the city, so for restoring biodiversity. And it'll be they've things like resourcing, and they've been very clear in their expectations around that current resourcing isn't enough. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, thank you, and thank you for all the work you're doing on it. It looks really exciting.
Thank you. Norm.
Yep, kia ora tātou. Again, sorry for being late. I was just in a meeting with the Regional Council around Te Huia and providing the cultural rationale around the kupu huia and what it means. But can I just ask a quick, in here I'll try to find the cultural consideration in regards to all this great, fantastic kaitaki work that our awesome team is doing. But can you just share some, enlighten us in regards to the role that iwi play and Mātauranga Māori plays in regards to these strategies?
Yeah, sure. So obviously COVID shut down our community engagement stuff, or for now, and so we're just looking at how we build that back up again. For starters, we want to make sure that we're reading and looking at all the information that Māori have already provided us. So the Waikato Tainui Environmental Management Plan, the vision and strategy for the river, some of the, I suppose, environmental management plans that some of the hapu have. So we want to make sure that we're well versed in that before we go and speak with Māori in order to not waste that time. But I don't have a lot of the detail. Maria might be able to speak to some of that, but we haven't quite worked through how we do that just yet. But we know that there's lots of information already that we can use. Maria, did you have anything to add into that?
I would just say that developing partnerships with iwi will be key to the success of the strategy, in my view.
Yep, and there's some real good exemplars through the WRA and other community groups. The overall outcome is the waterways, our land, our whenua, etc., with the key component being the cultural commerce of Mātauranga and how that applies. So, yeah, well done, and happy to support that conversation if required around that.
Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you, Norm. And look, my apologies. I can see you there, Councillor Martin, and I didn't welcome you earlier on, so my apologies for that, but welcome to.
I've been here since the beginning on iPhone or iPad, so I'm here purely obviously as an observer.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh yeah, me
Lovely.
too, yeah.
Thanks. Next on my list, Me Paula.
Thank you. Just I'm excited about this area of work, and that won't come as a surprise to anyone. It's been a bit of a slow burner for some time, and we have a new council now that has more heart for soft infrastructure projects, including green projects, which I think is great. Question is about, in terms of this, and I know you will do great work, Amanda and Maria, on this. How are we working? We can't do everything on our own. We've acknowledged the limited resource, and hopefully the government will give us some more. But given that, how are we working through partnerships with other key organisations, DOC, WRC, and so on? That's one question. And funders. And how do we pick up some flagship projects within this? Project Halo, for example, around the Tui was always more than the Tui. It was a natural biodiversity project. The Tui was the indicator that things were on the mend. It wasn't actually necessarily just about the bird. So just what your thinking might be about how we make this really sail. And so partnerships, funders, and how we make gullies something that really captures heart and soul of the wider community.
Yeah, for sure. So yes, partnership absolutely is a critical part of this. So obviously Regional Council through their work through LIBS has been very involved, and we continue to maintain that connection there.
Are they putting any partnership funding in there though?
In terms of the strategy development?
Yeah.
Or, not at this stage. So the focus with Nature in the City is on what council's role is in primarily sort of how do we make sure that we're doing our best in terms of restoring nature in the city, and obviously how do we partner with others, but it's very much sort of focusing on our locus of control, and that we can influence and partner, but you know that also depends on a willing party on the other side.
Yeah.
But certainly, you know, in terms of funders, Waikato River Authority, there's money available there to apply for. My understanding at the moment is there's not a coordinated approach across council of how we do that yet. So some of that work is around making sure that staff across the organisation are working well together and across areas, so city planning, within our community group, within transport, within our stormwater infrastructure, just making sure that we're actually joined up as an organisation. And in terms of the gullies, yes, we've heard that really clearly from the gully groups that that's important, and we've heard it quite strongly from our community as well, saying that gullies are sort of a key part of that identity. So those are all aspects that will be reflected in the strategy. Maria, I'm just wondering if you had anything else to add there?
Yeah, I think it's just worth mentioning that the strategy and Hamilton having really clear goals and targets in the space will help not only with confirming our operational plans and priorities in terms of what we're going to do, but it will help us form a more attractive package for those partnerships and funders, and people will be able to easily see how they can contribute, how they can help. We already do have, you know, some examples. Waiwhakariki is probably the best example of successful partnerships to date. So we know that it can work, and we know from Auckland and other centres that there is real opportunity in partnering. But I think we've just got to get our strategy and our direction clear, and then we can go chasing those partnerships and funders in a more meaningful way.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. No other questions, Paula?
No, thank you.
Okay, Dave.
Sorry, thanks, Madam Chair. Look, Norm has partly covered the point I was going to ask, but when I saw paragraph 10 on page 13 about the other stakeholders you're working with and further interviews are planned, I wondered where iwi were in this, and in this particular plan, why it's sort of, they're not really so much stakeholders as partners. I would have thought that we would have been working with them to scope it up first and before, yeah, it just sort of seems to be not quite the approach that we should have in this area. But I might be missing something, and Norm covered some aspects of this with you, or your answer, Amanda, to Norm.
Councillor Dave,
I was thinking they should be a bit more elevated than that.
Councillor Dave, I apologise. I probably took the items in the GM's report in the opposite order than what they're in the report. That paragraph 10 you're referring to is in reference to the climate action plan. So it's not the Nature in the City strategy that Amanda and Maria are talking to. And I was going to sort of talk to that next. But your point is absolutely correct, that Waikato Tainui are absolutely it's a partnership approach to developing that climate action plan. They're not the same as the other stakeholders.
Right.
That the plan is being developed in partnership with them, and I'll sort of, between Julie and myself, we'll just talk to that a little bit more just when we move on to that item, if that's okay.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxine.
Kia ora, everybody. Kia ora, Norm. Thank you for your questions, and Dave also for that follow-up question. I'm also really interested in our cultural considerations there, and thank you, Norm, for raising that. I know during the climate action strike days that students organised last year, I went along to one of the gullies, and at that time, one of the kuia talked to us about the history of that part of the river, and told us stories that have been known to her and the local iwi, and I wonder what we're doing in order to be able to weave those stories into those gully projects. It was a really meaningful experience for me, and understanding the history made it even more meaningful. And so I'd be interested to hear about how how our First People story is being woven into this ecology story.
Yeah, well, at a broad level, that's partly why we called it the Nature in the City strategy. So I guess the word nature, taking a more holistic approach, that was a key sort of reason for doing that, so that it was much more about everyone's understanding of that, rather than quite a specific scientific sort of understanding about biodiversity. And certainly some of the desktop research that we've been doing talks about exactly those sorts of issues around Indigenous knowledge, but also just about the fact that humans have an innate sense of connection with nature, and that it's partly the strategy's job to remind us of that. And so in that sense, it's around connection to nature, connection with nature. And from what I understand about Te Ao Māori, the Māori world, is that sense of connection and interconnectedness and being a part of is very much how that works. So we will be looking at how we weave that sort of conceptual thinking in a way, I guess some of the work that I've seen previously, in a way that doesn't just write a strategy and then have a Māori section and then the rest of the strategy. So to try and sort of weave it in through all of that, while absolutely acknowledging that tangata whenua have a key place there, but so that it's a bit more accessible for non-Māori as well. That's the thinking at this stage.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you. Angela.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a process question for staff. When will this committee see the final draft for the strategy?
Yeah, so we have still got the deadline of the end of this calendar year to get it across the line with you all. There will be a draft, our timeframes might have shifted slightly in terms of when that will happen, but sort of in October, November, there'll be a draft for you to have a look at. But it's my intention that we also have a briefing in between there to make sure that we've got your sort of your support. Much like the place strategy, we checked back in about that broad one pager for the strategy, just to go, hey, does this look okay? So that we're making sure that we're not bringing a draft strategy to you at the end that then becomes a little bit difficult to change.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you. What was that time frame again?
Did you say end of calendar year for the strategy?
The draft, sorry. The draft?
October, November, somewhere around about there. So we haven't pinned down that time frame just yet.
We're not bringing that forward? Is that?
No. No, we will be we'll be pushing to get that done, and particularly that we've got our community engagement to do that, that got pushed because of COVID. And hand on heart, I don't think that we can give you a strategy that doesn't have that component in there.
What we could do, Chair Margaret, is just work in some more updates through this committee as we move through that community engagement, if that would be helpful.
That would be great. Appreciate that. Thank you. Kish.
Thank you. Just a quick question around, I've heard talk in the past about walkways or access through the gully system, you know, because it covers such a large area. Has there, like, have you noticed any, is there appetite to explore this further, or have stakeholders, you know, has this come up with them in discussions?
Sorry, has
So
it, I missed that, has it?
Oh,
oh
sorry, I can take that one,
go.
Amanda.
Yeah.
So that comes further into the operational development plans in regards to gullies. So the path connections have definitely been included in the shovel-ready proposal. The reality is, and you all will have seen a lot of them, in order for us to develop these gullies, we would need to put some form of access track in to basically get there in the first place. So, but there are the gully sections are like the green fingers or green lungs of Hamilton, and they present significant opportunities for off-road movement of people and recreation, as well as the biodiversity aspects.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Kish. Martin, Councillor Gallagher.
Apologies, I'll make a contribution to the debate. I realise this is a question. I do ask to be in the line for the debate at the end of members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions from Councillors Maxine and Sarah, or have your hands still stayed up?
No, yes, I popped it back up again.
Okay, go ahead.
So just a couple of questions around, I guess, the timing, and can you confirm how we're going to make sure that this feeds into the long-term plan? And I understand we're doing kind of a parallel work on operational plans, but just ensuring that it does feed into long-term plan, and also other strategies that, you know, potentially that we're developing at the moment that potentially should be taking into account biodiversity principles and that kind of thing in their development.
Yeah, so Councillor Sarah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, that they are being progressed in tandem. So the strategy is obviously being developed. We don't have any choice if we are to get LTP proposals on time. We are developing them both in tandem. I guess as we move through the strategy, we will have a lot more clarity and feedback from our partners, our stakeholders, of what's important. So that will definitely help us target those LTP proposals.
Yeah, and I understand we're, oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add to that, so elected members might remember we sort of, I think last week or the week before, we sort of mentioned that those activity management plans, there's the online portal, where the SharePoint site, where you can access the way they're shaping up, and there's opportunity for elected members to feed into those, ask questions, etc. So if you have had the opportunity to go and have a look, you'll see that there's quite a significant section in each of those activity management plans about climate change and other sort of factors as well. So those things are actively being taken into account in the development of those plans. And so I just want to sort of give some assurance that those things are actively being considered now, despite the nature in the city and the climate action plan not being finalised yet. So yeah, just reinforcing that those things are happening in tandem. Yeah, that's what I'll say.
Will we get, thanks Sean, will we get some indication of when we receive, so, you know, the package of those activity management plans and recommendations for that long-term plan, that kind of thing, will we receive information on, I guess, to what extent those plans and actions actually help us to achieve the goals in those strategies. So, for example, it's possible to model, what emissions impact a certain transport program might have, or with biodiversity, to what extent the funding proposal put forward for restoration and resources would actually impact on our ability to, say, move from 2% to 10% cover of valuable biodiversity cover.
Well, yes, is the short answer to that. We can pack that into the proposals.
Okay, thank you.
Just checking to see if there are any further questions. I can't see any other hands up, but I would like to pose a question of my own. And it's following up from Norm's line of inquiry, Sean, and Dave's around partnership, the partnership status, and also input from Tainui. Can you tell me what sort of engagement we've had so far, please?
So the engagement, Chair Margaret, has been limited. Messages that we have received from Waikato Tainui is basically, don't ask us questions until you've read and understood our environment plan. So that is what Amanda and the team are working hard on at the moment. We would have liked to have engaged, but COVID has put a bit of a different lens on how we do that, and it is certainly in the plans to do.
Okay, appreciate the constraints there. And again, just following up from a previous question that Norm asked, I think actually it was at our last Environment Committee meeting, and it was around Māori, of a place or a setting. I mean, it applies to people as well, but and he talked about a Māori meter, which I understand that Tainui have some information and have already done some homework on what that might look like as well. Can you enlighten us with that, or is that still tied up with feedback or the opportunity to engage with Tainui?
Yeah, so thanks, Chair Margaret. I've been trying to chase that up for the last couple of weeks, and I haven't. I basically haven't gotten anywhere with it. I think the same sort of comments that Maria has made around the nature and the city strategy probably apply to the more broadly in terms of the climate action as well. We have had some engagement with Waikato Tainui about the exchange of thinking from a climate point of view, but similar sort of message in terms of focus being elsewhere at the moment, and that's sort of been a bit of a constraint. Julie might like to, I'm not sure if Julie can add anything further to that.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Exactly the same messages that Maria and Amanda have been receiving, though we now have got a meeting scheduled next week to talk to the relevant people at Tainui around their climate change plan. So that's progress.
Fantastic. Well, that's progress. Thank you. What about our talk and our own Māori iwi representatives on council? How have we had an opportunity to engage with them as well?
No, we haven't. So again, because of COVID, but I know that they're conducting Hui on Zoom, if I say that right. But we haven't tapped into that yet. I guess, like, I have been to see them for previous work, but I'm sort of a bit of a fan of turning up face to face first time. I probably wouldn't want to do that over Zoom first up. So we've sort of had to reshuffle some of our engagement stuff to make sure that we're following good process.
Okay, thank you. Look, appreciate the constraints, but I still think it's important to keep asking questions.
Sure.
Thank you for your answers. Jolly, got any further questions from anyone?
Just one more from me, Chair Margaret.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Is that all right?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, kia ora. Yeah, in the report, these really the detail around cultural considerations needs to be pumped up a bit more. I think, Sean, and we realise the constraints around iwi engagement and the role that thought play. But there's a real good template, and there's a number of cultural health indicators: Māori-omata, Māori compass, cultural health indicators, chi, and there's a template in Tamaki Makaurau, and I've got it in front of me. It's quite significant, and it talks about cultural health indicators from a Te Ao Māori point of view in regards to iwi and Tamaki Makaurau and how they relate to the council's aspirations, strategies, and drivers. So understanding the Tai Timu plan is one part, but understanding other models is another part, because it helps preempt the conversation that's going to come forward.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, Norm. I'd be really happy for you to share that with us, and we can take that into account. And I just would say, in terms of the wellbeing considerations, in terms of what I've written in the GM's report, the reason I guess the only reason I haven't fleshed those out is because these were sort of, I guess, progress updates on the two reports, as opposed to requiring a decision of council. So I hadn't put in cultural or environmental or other considerations into the report, simply because the recommendation was to receive the report, and there was it was purely for update purposes. So when we come back with substantive decisions for the committee, or on either of these strategies or other matters, we will absolutely make sure that there's a full sort of wellbeing considerations, including the cultural piece in that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think a cultural consideration is the fact that you've tried to engage with the iwi and they're just too busy at the moment. So that even bullet pointing that, so that these rationale connect to that consideration. But yeah, protocol that.
Sure.
Yeah, couple of minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, Norm. Look, would just, before we move on to put the recommendation up, does anybody, as a result of having read Hannah Huggins' email this morning, would anyone like to pose a question to any staff members around that report? I feel like we've answered most things, but there might be another question that somebody would like to put.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I thought we haven't talked about green buildings in the report. I just have one question on that.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Sean, we're talking about in here green buildings, which is focused on commercial properties. And of course, we've got Kakariki House in Hamilton East, which is an excellent example. What I'm looking for is, I'm really interested in this committee delivering some tangible results to Hamiltonians. So I'm wondering if and when this committee will get some work, obviously you need resources, around grey water tanks and water tanks for and other sustainable things like that for residents, because it would appear to me that this committee would be the best place to have those discussions to make recommendations and inform the future LTP. So is that in our timeline somewhere, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the elements of water tend to be in the infrastructure operations committee. I think that's a discussion that we need to have between the environment and the infrastructure committees to work out where those things do come. There is a bit of let's just acknowledge that there's a bit of a grey area over grey water. But because I think certainly from the environment committee point of view, that strategic direction around what's important and what makes a difference and what contributes to environmental outcomes, that's absolutely the remit of the environment committee.
Yeah.
Then when it comes to actually implementing
of course,
action and solutions, it really kind of sits in that infrastructure committee.
Yeah, and I know, Sean, you've set up meeting between the chairs of those committees to do that, but I agree I'd like this committee to who would have oversight of any of our principles or strategies in the future to recommend that. So as long as that's on the list for discussion, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Thanks for bringing that forward, Councillor. Let's go back to my list. Are there new hands up? We're in are we going for questions? Round 3 of questioners? That's what I'm interpreting at the moment.
If we're on the climate action plan part of it or green building, I thought we were kind of doing section by section. I've got a question.
Well, actually, I wasn't treating it that way. I was just going whoever wants to speak about anything at all. But go ahead.
I'm going to make some comments, not questions. Are you in questions still?
Still questions.
Just a
Okay,
couple
thanks.
of brief questions. One was, is the September timeframe realistic for the climate action plan?
Yeah, Julie, do you want to talk to that?
Yes, thank you, Sean. I believe it is. Some of the issues we've incurred, similar to Maria and Amanda, have been access to groups. So we have conducted a number of interviews with key stakeholders and are completing those this week. Again, talking with Go Eco about them arranging or hosting for us a community session, but of course they are not willing to consider that until we move to level 1. So if we continue on the pathway at the moment, we're looking to move to level 1 soon. September is doable.
Okay, all right, thank you. And the other part of that was just in regard to it coming back for adoption or say approval to first go out for public consultation. Is that going to only come to this Environment Committee, or is there going to be a chance for the full Council Committee to actually approve or adopt the plan, particularly given the importance of it and the far-reaching nature of it?
Yes, what we'd like to do is, before we put anything in front of the Environment Committee, which is where it's to come first, is to have a number of workshops or open sessions where we can seek feedback from all elected members on what's in the plan. The process, I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, is it comes back to the Environment Committee. You recommend it to Council, who can then endorse it as well. But happy to be advised if we need to follow a different process.
That is the normal process. I was just looking at the terms of reference, which do say to develop the policy, approve and monitor and implement strategies in relation to the climate action plan. So I would need to just double check and look a little bit further into it, but the normal process is as you have specified.
Okay, but that recommendation would really just be then a line kind of in the council report without necessarily kind of full debate or discussion.
That would be at the discretion of the chair.
Yeah. Everything's open to debate. We can approve or ratify something at committee level, but it still goes back to council, and most certainly it'll either get over the line easily or it can still be challenged.
Yeah, just usually with those recommendations, we don't attach a full report to it. So I'll leave that for debate though. Thank you.
Who's next? Martin? Questions?
Yeah, questions. Can't wait for debate at the end of the other members. Just a question I have, and probably relates to work we're going to do on resourcing, but the infrastructure point that Angela raised. For example, if through this committee, which we're going to be looking at the Queensland style approach to grey water in terms of preserving our water resource. Obviously, we've got a major issue going forward in terms of water. Just help me, surely there would be a body of work, I think, done in this committee, and that would either go off to infrastructure or Dave Mack's strategy committee, bearing in mind the other committees are committees of the whole. And I'm just wanting to fine tune the specialist work this committee with adequate resources could do to inform the work, particularly I think of the strategy and the infrastructure committees. I don't think it all goes to council.
No, it's a really good question, Councillor Martin. So I see the work of this committee as being the sort of helping setting the strategic direction from an environmental perspective, as in understanding what those and agreeing what those climate targets are, what other environmental targets we might have, and then being able to sort of work through what the implications of those things are. And so they would essentially help guide council and committees, other committees in decision making. So, for example, it would provide a level of expertise on water, or a level of expertise, a level of direction, sorry, on water, on things like transport or energy efficient buildings, etc. But some of the decisions and the reports might go to the other relevant committees, be it strategic growth or infrastructure, or in some cases community.
So if I've got this right, and this comes to an SLT and a mayoral chair's leadership thing here, it seems to me that the SLT or you will have to identify a report that would come to the Environment Committee, or the Environment Committee may initiate some stuff, but in terms of some tin tax practical stuff, then that would go direct to the relevant other committee, like infrastructure or strategy. It just seems to me we're getting hung up with terms of reference when it's respectfully, this committee has a huge potential to do some really good specialist work that will inform the work of a couple of the other key committees as we go on.
Yes, I think my view is the same as yours, Councillor Martin.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Right, we have a staff recommendation, which I'll put. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Mayor Paula. Ian, do you want to bring that up? Right, let's open for debate. I'm not necessarily wanting to start debate at this stage, but I'll have a say at the end. Go to the screen. First hand, Mayor Paula.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for a good report. And I just want to comment on a couple of things that have been said in passing across the agenda about resourcing. This is absolutely not going to be a token committee of this council, and I've been pushing very hard with the before and since COVID to ensure that your committee gets sufficient resources to undertake its work. And I'll push very hard in the annual plan meeting next week to make sure you get the financial resources. But I've also charged Richard with looking for in-house resource as much as possible. And I absolutely understand the community's frustration that some things have not gone as far or fast as they would like, and I personally share that view to some extent, but I'm also very aware of the circumstances that have led to that. We've made a good start on climate. It's not where we need to be by any stretch of the imagination, but we've made a start on it. We've made a start on what's happening within our own organisation. We've gone that far, and Sarah's been quite public and about the need to go much further than that and reach further and faster. And I support that. I support that. Very difficult in the times of lockdown to reach out to the community groups that we need to partner with, because at the end of the day, the City Council should be a leader in this space, but it can't achieve everything on its own, because that would require a huge amount of resourcing. and change. But the upside of this is that we do have this, as everyone's pointed out today, post-COVID, we have the opportunity to do things differently with regard to energy efficiency and effectiveness and those kind of things. I'm really, really optimistic and hopeful that the government will put some money into one of our green projects, whether that be Waiwhakariki or the gullies or both. That would be ideal. And that will certainly crank up what we need to do. Really, thank you very much to you, Margaret and Sarah, for leading the natural strategy, Natural Hamilton. Something that I've been passionate about for many, many years, since my days on regional council, when I got involved in biodiversity strategies and the TUI project and the Halo project and others. There's a lot of good stuff that can be, stories that can be told. I'd like to see us, through your committee, tell some of those good stories. We have some amazing ecologists just over the road. Oh, they're just going to be just down the road in Ward Street. People like Bruno David and others from the Waikato Regional Council that we can partner with and tap into, because as an organisation, we would find it hard to replicate that knowledge and that experience. So what we want to do, and I think Amanda and Maria are the right people to do this. I mean, looking what Amanda managed to achieve with the play strategy, if she does a similar level of work on this, we'll have an awesome strategy at the end of it. So I'm quite excited about that body of work. And we're lucky to have Norm on the committee too, because I know that his understanding of tikanga Māori, Mataranga Māori, Maori of the river, and all of those other concepts within Māoridom will only strengthen our strategy, both for climate and for the green spaces. So I'm really looking forward to bringing that to the table too. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Thank you for your comments. The next speaker I have is Sarah.
Thank you, Chair Margaret. Firstly, I just wanted to say that in our agenda setting meeting, we had discussed reporting on some of the good things that Council is doing at the moment in regards to reducing our impact on the environment. So, for example, the transport plan that we're working on. So I just want to flag that that would be a really positive thing to actually be including in our General Manager's reports going forward. In regard to the Climate Action Plan, I'm really, really frustrated and disappointed with the progress that we've made to date and the speed at which we're working. Certainly, staff are doing an amazing job. It's just we haven't resourced it properly, and COVID has put a dampener on things as well. But really, when we look at the urgency that we treated COVID with as a council, we put together a 12-point recovery action plan, in a matter of a couple of weeks. We've really pulled finger and we've treated it with true urgency. And so I think that's an example of local government actually working quickly. A lot of the time we say councils move slowly, but we can move quickly when we want to, when we have the will. So I would really encourage us to rethink whether the reasons for this delay are really legitimate reasons, or if we're really just making excuses here. And I feel the frustration of the student enviro leaders, because they did push for a climate emergency. Council said it would act and create an urgent action plan, and now we're looking at a whole year later, potentially still only having a draft. I also just want to emphasise that in all of our meetings, even though we don't have a climate action plan, we're actually facing opportunities to take action on almost a weekly basis. For example, the Innovating Streets opportunity, our shovel-ready projects that we put forward to the Crown Infrastructure Partners for funding, procurement policy, which we're reviewing at the moment, the restoration opportunity in the annual plan budget, our growth strategy. One of the biggest things we could do is actually grow differently. The more we sprawl out, the more we rely on fossil fuel transport. So I just really want to emphasise that while we don't have a climate action plan right now, every single decision that we're making is impacting on the climate. And so we should be looking at those decisions through that lens, particularly when we're borrowing money and we're borrowing from our future generations. And so we should be ensuring that they benefit from the way that we spend those funds. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Martin.
Thank you. Are there others who wish to speak first? Because obviously I come at the end of the queue if I'm not a member of the committee.
I'll speak after you. There's no one else to speak.
Okay, thank you. I certainly acknowledge the Councillor Sarah's contribution. I want to, if I may, pick up very slightly a point that Mayor made earlier where there was an implication that this council somehow has more heart for so-called soft environment projects than the previous council. I will, where necessary, defend the record of the previous council. I think we had a lot of heart in a lot of areas. Having said that, this current mayor's leadership in sustainability and environmental advocacy, both in terms of her regional council role and the current role, is second to none. And I think the proof and the absolute proof of the pudding and test for this new council is actually what we achieve. One of the big issues is going to be how you, in real terms, and it was previously discussed, but bear with me, Madam Chair, how you discuss the resourcing of this committee and the work we're doing. Now, that may be by redeployment of existing staff, new staff. The crunch you will arrive at is during the annual plan when you're discussing your relative rate increases.
Yes.
Because that's when the rubber is hitting the road and how you spend the money and how you make the tough decisions. Please do not misinterpret the next bit. I'm not wanting to dredge up old history. There was a consciousness at a time where a previous council was contemplating putting a housing subdivision next to the iconic Lake Whaiwhakarite. All right, we had the reserve debate. I don't want to relitigate that debate because in the end, we arrived at a good place. And I think we're now becoming increasingly in a lot better place. And I'm acknowledging the leadership of Sarah and others and the Climate Action Group to really shift our consciousness. So people like me have to keep, having that as a frame of reference. But the tin tax is going to be how much resource you put into staff who are going to tell you how would a grey water system work in the public transport area. Just way, there's so many areas. And as I've said, it's going to be making sure, and me being assured that we are adequately resourced, not just for report writers, but people who are going to really.
Can you wind up, please, Martin? I think the
Absolutely,
time's up.
Sorry, thank you. Are going to give this committee a great, solid work. All right. So thank you for your tolerance, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for your contribution. And now I do have Mango Norm. I'd like to.
Kia ora tātou. I just want to acknowledge the work of everyone in regards to environment, climate, biodiversity, the comments of Māori. And when you look at the exemplar through the river settlement and the principles of mātauranga as a korowai, tōku awa koi ora me ona pikonga he kuratangi hi o te mātāmuri. The river of life had each been more beautiful than the last. That's the mantra upon which the WRA has acquired resources so as to deploy and employ people to restore the mauri of the river, its natural ecosystems, etc. So the korowai of mātauranga Māori is fundamental to looking after our environment, and through the work that we did in terms of engaging through the Sustainable Development Goals, a lot of the were going back to traditional Māori Indigenous systems. So we had to go back in order to go forward. There is a saying that we all connect to, Waikato taniwha he piko he taniwha, he piko he taniwha. The river of 100 chiefs at each bend of the river, there's a taniwha, there's a guardian. We ourselves are taniwha, Bunty, you're a taniwha, my friend. We are guardians of our planet, we're guardians of our river system. And the key here is if we work together in unison, using the principles of sustainability, enrichment, obviously with the comments of Māori and cultural indigeneity, how we achieve a better place is essentially in our hands. And There's a cultural saying around Whitia te rito te harakeke, kei whia te komako eko. If you pull the essence out of the harakeke, where will the bellbird sing? So if we don't look after our planet, we will be singing as a community here in Kiriroa. So just on behalf of myself, thank you for the efforts. I'm passionate kaitaki, and I'm here to offer and support where I can with staff, and obviously to help lead strategy at a governance level also. Kia ora tātou.
Kapai, thank you, Norm.
Proud to be a taniwha, Norm.
Looks like Councillor Maxine.
Kia ora, thank you. Hard to follow that, Norm. I feel very humbled with your knowledge, and it's part of what I really enjoyed about the Climate Action Day that I shared with other Hamilton East residents out of the gully in Hamilton or Hillcrest, and so those stories were the motivation to get those volunteers on the day to be doing that work. So sharing that knowledge is a critical part, I think, of being able to tell Hamilton's story and recognise our First People, and the impact and the knowledge that you have of our city and our systems. I'd also like to acknowledge Councillor Sarah as well, and the excellent summary that she's made there. I share her frustrations. I share those of our youth in our city, and we hold a very high position in the responsibility that we take, and that we do that with real meaningful actions and in a timely way.
Just wind up now, Maxine, please.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret, Chair Margaret. We have the opportunity through many ways in order to be able to do that, and this committee holds a very special, I think, position in order to be able to take that message right across all of the committees that we are involved with, and I'd like to support that in whatever way that I can. In our finance committee also, many of those decisions will require a financial lens across it also. Kia ora. Thank you, Margaret, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And it looks like everyone's had their opportunity to speak, so I will wind up. And look, I share many of the comments that have already been discussed this morning, and around frustration and delays. Totally get that, totally understand. And yes, we need to be moving faster and moving forward. But what I do want to also acknowledge and also focus on is that we have been doing things, and we have had some positive wins already. And I think when we find out the results of our shovel-ready applications, the success, and I'm feeling very heartened and very confident about the sorts of projects that will be backed and supported by central government, given the news and given given the heads up that they've already given us around our gullies and Waiwhakareke, that we'll be getting runs on the board and we'll be away. Despite the fact that our climate action plan has been moving slowly, what I am heartened by is by the attitude that our councillors and our staff have taken around the principles of what we're trying to achieve in our through our environment and through our environmental well-being. So it's an attitude and it's a way of thinking that we're now taking with us in all our decision making and the way we just go about council business. And I think that's really important. On the one hand, we can strategize and say all manner of goals and what we want to achieve, but I think it goes deeper than that. It comes down to your values and to your attitude, and actually what it is, what sort of world we want to live in, both today and in the future. And I think we have that as a council, and I think we all understand that as an organisation, what our responsibility is. So I'm really thankful for that. And the challenge that I put to you all is that when we come to make our decisions, when the rubber does hit the road around how we are going to prioritise and how we are going to support the goals and the plans that we want, I expect each and every one of you and more to support the projects and the financing through our annual plan, and hotly behind it through our long-term plan, so that we can achieve what it is that we know and our people expect us to achieve through this committee. So thank you all this morning for your contributions. Thank you, staff, for your ongoing work. I know times have been challenging for all the reasons that we know, but expect that things will move more quickly for you, and that you have our full support, and we look forward to more results, imminent results. That's all I have to say. I see Mayor Paula has just moved on.
No, I'm just...
Oh, there you are. Just about, we're just about to put this to the vote. So
I'll vote and then go.
Yeah. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those
Any
against?
dissenting? Motion is carried unanimously.
For those of you who are interested, just notice that there is that thing, the Chamber of Commerce thing over lunch, a webinar that popped up post our meeting on living wage. Some of you may be interested. It came into your email, I believe, this morning.
Okay, thank you. So I was trying to read. So look, at that point, we'll close the meeting. Thank you very much. And yeah, sorry, Paula, I got a bit confused. I was reading your message and then wasn't actually looking at you on the screen. So
that's all right. That's cool.
Very good. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Margaret.
Cheers.
Thank you. Well done. Thanks.
Thank you.